We live in a large and expanding universe, filled with wonder and excitement. A universe that is also filled with vast unknowns. As we begin to embark upon the task of taking the tiny steps outward into space, many questions still abound about how we got here, the purpose we serve, and what lies ahead for us in our future. We must also acknowledge that we have gained an abundance of information about the planet in which we live. But as we begin to gaze outward into the abyss, let us not forget that there is much that is taking place on this planet that we have yet to understand. Although I claim that my interest has been in the pursuit and discovery of extraterrestrial life forms, I must admit that this statement was not entirely true. My real inclination deals with the discovery and evidence that supports the existence of a deity or deities responsible for my existence and the existence of this reality we call the universe. The Earth. Although a small planet in comparison to others in our solar system, it is still a magnificent and overwhelming spectacle to observe. I realized this a few years ago, as it became more evident while I was watching the International Space Station's Earth View camera, as it was beaming down images of the surface below. This was quite a spectacle to witness, and although it seemed that every time I thought I was seeing something unusual, it was being abruptly halted with a message saying, "Please stand by. The high-definition Earth viewing experiment is either switching cameras or we are experiencing a temporary loss of signal with the International Space Station." This message was quite concerning, at least to me, because I thought it unusual in the sense that if the people on the ground in the control center couldn't ensure the connectivity of something as simple as a camera attached to the inside or outside of the space station, then how could they possibly be able to ensure the safety and security of the people on board? This simply didn't make any sense to me, unless of course we're being misled, misinformed, or both. Although I appreciate the efforts and information being acquired by personnel on board the International Space Station, I do not, however, understand the rationale for not allowing any information to be discussed about extraterrestrials that were seen by any personnel aboard the International Space Station. But this movie is not about NASA or the International Space Station or about what they have allowed or not allowed us to know. It is, however, about all the information that I've obtained about extraterrestrial craft and the extraterrestrials themselves. And that is the information I want to share with you. For the record, let me just say that I believe that extraterrestrials have been here since this planet's inception. However, having said that, it is still unclear what role the ETs play in our development. But one thing is clear, at least to me, and that is, extraterrestrials are here and appear to be involved in the day-to-day operations of this planet. I also believe that from time to time, based upon our development, that they have to find a way to gain our attention without appearing to mandate or demand a change in our course or direction. Their lack of intrusiveness may perhaps have something to do with our design, or perhaps their vow to not interfere with our free will. However, this rule may not be ironclad. But the interesting thing about free will is that it needs to be constantly monitored to ensure that things don't go awry, that it stays within the parameters of its programming, and if it does go beyond the boundaries of its programming, the Creator can with ease shut it down or destroy it. But before it gets to that point, there are several things to consider. 1. Can we be salvaged or saved? 2. Will we listen, or have we all tuned out? 3. Should the ETs make us aware of their presence? 4. How many of us can be lost before they decide to start over? 5. How important are we to the scheme of things? 6. How far do they allow us to proceed without their intervention? And 7, what will it take to get us pointed in the right direction again? I believe that some of them are now revealing themselves to individuals who have been chosen from all walks of life. To those they have seen who have expressed an interest in the salvation of this planet and its inhabitants. My first visitation began when I was about 5 years old. It began while I was outside playing in the yard. I saw what I perceived to be many airplanes traveling south, but they were a few miles away from me, so I couldn't really see what they actually were. I stood there and watched them as they flew out of sight, and that should have been the end of the story, but it wasn't. Although I had experienced many encounters over the past years, the next most memorable encounter at least didn't happen until about 20 years later, and I told only a few people about it. After opening up to them, most of them just dismissed my story as a bad dream, and they did their best to convince me of the same. So for a brief while I just kind of left it alone. Stopped talking about it, at least until the spring of 2009, when I began to see them again. All of my sightings started off innocently enough with small events that were unnoticeable to my eyes, but were seemingly being picked up mentally and planting seeds of desire to investigate in my mind. The desire to know what was happening around me was overwhelming. They were giving me the ability to hone in on things that were seemingly insignificant at first. Then slowly but surely some of it began to make sense. While I will not pretend that I fully understood all that they were showing me, I can say, however, that I was beginning to connect the dots to what it was I was witnessing. Most of what was being presented to me could only be seen on video or through the use of an infrared or flash camera. However, there were numerous events that could be seen with the naked eye and captured in a photo or on video. Don't ever allow someone else to describe your own experience to you. because you'll find out in the long run that they don't know what you're talking about. And in the end, you will end up more confused and perplexed than ever. Now, even though you may not immediately understand what's going on, you have to consider that whoever or whatever is exposing all of this to you is perhaps a tiny bit more intelligent than you or your friends are. Which means that maybe, just maybe, they chose you for a reason. Before you decide to go to anyone else, you should have asked yourself, did they allow anyone else to see or record this event? And if your answer is no, then why in the hell would you allow anyone else to explain it? I am an extraterrestrial experiencer. Now, to an enormous amount of people on the planet, this means absolutely nothing. But to me, for the past 8 years, it meant everything. Now, even though it took me a while, I eventually had to come to the realization that trying to get someone else to try to explain this was a huge mistake. Not because they weren't trying to help me, but because they couldn't. After all, how could they? They had no personal knowledge of what I was going through or how it was affecting me. So what they were attempting to do, I found, was neither therapeutic or helpful. Here you are sitting in front of this person trying to evaluate you and your experience, but they have never had an extraterrestrial encounter or even attempted to understand it. Now, I'm not saying that they don't or that they can't help people to deal with this. I'm only saying that it didn't seem to help me. So if you're an experiencer and you find some therapeutic value in seeking counseling, then by all means do it. I just didn't. As a matter of fact, what it did do was try to find a way to explain the type of psychosis or mental breakdown that would better help to explain or help you to accept your reality. Or in their words, help you to find your own truth. Well, I wasn't looking for my own truth. I was looking for the truth. I didn't want or need to make it personal. I just wanted to be able to explain what I was seeing and what I was feeling and get others to see and feel it too. So over the next several years, I began to find a way to do just that. So it's now 2012, and I let this video lay around for almost 2 years and never took a second look at it. As a matter of fact, during the course of that time and me recording all of this, there were people who seemed bent on destroying any and every video and picture I had. Because after saving every picture and video that I had recorded to my computer, I found that it now suddenly developed a virus whose sole purpose seemed to be to delete any and all video and photographic material on all of my hard drives. Luckily, I was thoughtful enough to save several copies of each on different mediums. Otherwise, I would have lost everything and would now have nothing to show for 8 years of work. So when I did finally sit down and decide to see what I had recorded, I was amazed to find that there were beings on this craft that could be seen in several frames in the video. The ones I'm presenting here now are only but a few. So you see, if you're just a little bit patient, the answers will begin to unfold right in front of your eyes. I got to see something different almost every day. I guess as long as I didn't show any fear, they were willing to show me as much as I was willing to see. And they gave me plenty to see. They kept me busy almost every day throughout the year, constantly taking pictures and recording videos while they were preparing me. But I didn't know at the time that they were preparing me, or what they were preparing me for. I'd only spoke to them once, and it was when they took me from my bed and had me standing out in the driveway. That's when they asked me if I would like to go with them. I made it clear to them at that time that I had no such desire to travel with them, because I feared that I would miss my family too much. But I guess they had other ideas. So they decided to take me on a little trip to show me what I might be missing. Although I was conscious when they took me up, when I got back I didn't remember a thing. But months later I began to realize that I had taken a couple of pictures that I couldn't explain. The first one being this picture of this rock-shaped craft taking off, and the other was of large ships that appeared to be in space. I have no memory of taking these pictures or where I was when they were taken.